get us into the game here. There we go. All right. Verhuver in the blue versus Eery in the red. Eery playing the Norse. The Norse can be pretty cheesy with their infantry building technique, or I'm sorry, unique ability. Very quick barracks coming down for Verhuver, but Verhuver then pulls a villager to finish the storehouse. I don't know. Okay, there he goes. Eery, again, the Norse, so we might see some kind of cheeky play from Eery here. Maybe some tower rushing, something to that effect. Greeks, very standard. Probably the most kind of well-rounded civ in Age of Empires Online, so be interested to see how these boys play this matchup. I think Verhuver's best bet is going to be maybe try to get some early pressure on Eery to try to create some momentum. But then again, you've also got to be wary of the raiding from the Norse with those raiders. So we will see. Recon, thanks for joining up, my friend. Glad to see you in the stream. Contagion. Casper, everyone's up in here. Glad to see everybody. Let's take a look at the map real quick. We see Verhuver's base. Pretty well defended over here on the eastern side. Nice wall possibility right here. Eery already trying to make some trouble with his scouts there. Pretty wide open front door here for Verhuver. And he's also got a pretty wide open back door here on the western side of his map. Taking a look at Eery's base. Eery's a little bit more open. You know, he's got this kind of open choke point here, which can provide access to the eastern side of his base here, and then also an open choke point here on the west. But Eery's hunts are a little bit further back into these choke points, whereas Verhuver, you know, has this hunt that's kind of right beyond that choke point. So we'll see how these players try to establish some map control. Verhuver's already got some spearmen out onto the field here, so nice play there from Verhuver, but Eery is ready for it. He's got 4 spearmen of his own in addition to his 2 scouts. The Norse have 2 scouts, a ranged scout and a melee scout. And these Norse spearmen are quite tanky. 260 health, 30 armor, all around, almost 60 snare. Same armor and snare for these Greek spearmen, but a little less health, but a little bit more DPS for the Greek spearmen. So we'll see who wins this head-to-head. Probably going to come down to micro, and indeed, Verhuver trying to get his low health spearman out of there. Eery was able to get his low health spearman out of there. Does fall down now. Verhuver trying to do the best he can to work down this spearman, but Eery's just doing so well microing that. Verhuver tries to get that guy out of there, does not do so. Does escape with 6 HP, that spearman there. And Eery continuing to stream more spearmen into this battle. So Verhuver is going to be forced to retreat here to his hunt. He's got a couple more spearmen joining the fray. So he's probably got enough to defend this hunt here, and luckily this hunt is almost depleted. So it looks like he's going to be transitioning to this other hunt down here. Meanwhile, Eery working on his western hunt there. Starting the transition from the southern hunt. Does have a tree line going here and gathering from stone, so he is preparing for that second town center as he heads into H2. Meanwhile, Eery does push down onto this storehouse and does destroy it, but luckily for Verhuver, he was ready to move to his next hunt. Meanwhile, Verhuver also gathering from stone and also headed to H2. Eery's going to get there a little bit sooner, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal for Verhuver if he's able to stay in tow with his economy. Oh my goodness, he was 1 stone off from that second town center. That's funny. But he is now ready for that second town center, so Verhuver about to throw it down. Eery looking for a place as well. It does find him a nice little spot here. This Rhino is going to give him a little bit of trouble. Okay, who's responsible for this? The Rhino is a horny animal. That's just disrespectful. Rhino's my favorite animal, and y'all got to disrespect him like that with a sexual innuendo. That's just unfortunate. It is going to give Eery some trouble, though, there. Verhuver, meanwhile, going for more of a defensive town center here. Building his town center along his tree line, so that may be the smart play from Verhuver. Again, kind of anticipating that raiding from Eery and recognizing that as the Greeks, his best chance probably lies in H3, perhaps even H4. Although the Toxotes of H2 for the Greeks can rain hellfire down upon the throwing axemen of Eery. Eery does have the raiders to counter the Toxotes, and the Greeks don't have a great anti-cavalry option in H2. Obviously, spearmen can defend okay, but it's difficult to keep up with the speed with just spearmen. Eery not doing much with his scouts here. I'd like to maybe see an outpost here from this ranged scout of the Norse. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Norse or may not be familiar with Age of Empires Online, this outpost here from this ranged scout of the Norse, it is able to train war dogs, which in my personal opinion I wish had been saved for the Romans, but nevertheless, beggars cannot be choosers. War dogs are very cheap. Technically, I think they're technically cavalry, but they're able to harass. Get some harass and raiding done. War dogs are, so I'd like to see that come down from Eery. He's not chosen to do so yet. He is kind of opting just for some visibility with his scouts here. He's got his melee scout on the left and the ranged scout on the right of Verhuver's base, just to kind of get some map awareness. Meanwhile, Verhuver kind of splitting his forces here, trying to go on the offensive against Eery. Eery making use of these Norse infantrymen to build military buildings, which saves on gathering time for your villagers. Bit of a noob woodline here for Eery. What is this? Come on now, Eery. You got villagers all over the place on that woodline. You're better than that, Eery. Kidding. Nice pickup there from Verhuver. To the cost of one spearman, was able to push Eery off his hunt there for a moment. So, sometimes it's the small wins, and Verhuver did just get a small little victory there. He is now in full retreat, though. But meanwhile, look at this. He tried to pick off this town center for Eery, or rather, not pick off the town center, but rather pick off some villagers. He was not able to do so, though. That town center was enough to defend. Just not a big enough mass of units for Verhuver, I think, to get anything done. This horny rhino is once again causing fits for our players. And yeah, as predicted, here comes some raiders for Eery. So these raiders are going to be a nuisance for Verhuver. Still no outpost, though. We want to see war dogs, Eery. Give us what we want. Give the people what they want and get us some war dogs onto the field. Once again, Verhuver trying to make trouble here on this eastern town center, but I don't know if that's the best raiding spot for Verhuver, because Eery is able to very quickly garrison his villagers into this town center to protect them, and the defensive fire from the town center, and plus the fact that those villagers were gathering pretty close to the town center anyway. So again, I don't know if it was the best choice there for Verhuver. Maybe try to poke on this western hunt again, or maybe this western tree line, but nevertheless, Eery is amassing his raiders here. Is going to see what trouble he can find kind of in the southern part of Verhuver's base. He is going to find that Verhuver has not pushed out into this corner yet. He will find this tree line, but he will find it protected by this town center. These houses are going up for Verhuver as well, so might provide a nice little wall if he's able to get them up in time. Eery is at home here. back to his raiders. As you can see, his cursor position here on the map, as well as Verhuver's. Love that about this spectator mode. You're able to see where our players are looking. And it doesn't look like Eery saw that these houses were going up. He might have tried to pick off this villager, pick off a couple of these houses. He is coming back. See if he can cause any damage here. Amassing more raiders here on the western side of Verhuver's base. Meanwhile, amassing his infantry at home. Large amount of throwing axemen. These throwing axemen are infantry units that have a small ranged attack. And here come the raiders. And yeah, this amount of 7 raiders is going to be able to drop 1 or 2 villagers before they're able to garrison. It's going to drop this villager as well. Look at this split from Eery. Splits off 2 raiders to get that villager. That villager does escape, but was not able to finish that house. Eery will probably pick off this house and then choose to get out of there. So smart raiding there from Eery. No, he chooses to go back in, but yeah, he's going to see this force from Verhuver and decides that that's enough for one fight. Meanwhile, Verhuver trying to get some series on the field to maybe do some raiding of his own, but unfortunately series are not spectacular for raiding. They did have a little buff recently. I believe it was recently. They got a little bonus against villagers to try to help them in that regard. But nevertheless, these raiders are going to be better suited. They're going to try to move back through here. They're going to get caught by these units from Verhuver. So Verhuver, a little bit on his back foot here. He is moving his series onto the field. It's once again going to run straight into that town center. So I don't know how much damage he's going to be able to do with 2 series. Meanwhile, look at this amount of raiders from Eery. Very scary. 14 raiders. And yeah, here come the towers from the Norse infantry. So Verhuver needs to scout this, honestly. Where's his scout? He's got some series over here. I believe his scout might be dead. He needs to scout this, though, and see that Eery's trying to get towers up right to the north of his base, Verhuver's base. Verhuver getting some upgrades coming in here, but I don't know that these upgrades are going to do much for him. The philosophy might be good for research time, but he's got a split force here. These units are not going to be able to deal with these raiders, especially because these Toxotes are very weak to these raiders. These raiders have a double ranged bonus, and look at this 2-pronged attack from Eery. Eery moving in with his infantry as well, bringing down these defenders for Verhuver. Might get a barracks for his troubles, does not. Decides to fall back here with his raiders. Verhuver able to get enough units over here to defend against those raiders. Needs to get some more spearmen into his composition to deal with those raiders. Get his Hypaspis over here to deal with these throwing axemen. If he's able to, deftly position spearmen over here to deal with the raiders and the Toxotes and Hypaspis here to the north of his base, he may be able to deal with this unit composition from Eery. But Eery is headed to age 3, so Eery's probably going to have some horsemen onto the field shortly. We'll also see some very nice units in the way of Berserkers and Harjars. We'll see what Eery chooses to go with. But yeah, Eery just has this stranglehold right now on Verhuver. Verhuver trying to throw down this wall. Might get it just in time. Oh, and he does. Eery is deterred. But for how long? These poor stone miners are going to probably meet their demise. They do indeed. And look at this. Verhuver trying to push out, but he is going to see these raiders here now on the western flank of his base. He's going to position his army very smartly to fend off Eery, so nicely done there. But Verhuver needs to find a way to break free, because this very quickly could turn into just a deathly stranglehold from Eery with these towers. So far, Eery just electing to have 2, to kind of give him some support. This allows him to fall back with his throwing axemen and prevent any counter pushes from Verhuver. So, it's a nice play there from Eery, and Eery is again in age 3 now. Meanwhile, Verhuver is a little bit gold starved. He needs to move onto this gold mine here. He is. Those stone miners are going to die every time, so he needs to try to stop going from that stone. He's trying to throw out some more walls, to get some defense. Still nothing from Eery's scout over here. Very unfortunate, War dogs could really turn the tide, especially to create really a three. I mean, imagine this. Imagine an outpost right about here. Gives him visibility. I mean, his scouts giving him visibility, but gives an outpost right here to watch this eastern side to see if Verhuver goes for a market line, which Verhuver is very desperately going to need in the next 5 minutes or so, if not sooner. It's going to need a market line, so you could see, Verhuver trying to push out to the eastern side here, but then also would be able to throw down some war dogs, and those war dogs could create a three-front war here for Verhuver. You know, the infantry here in the north, which, look at this, the fortress is coming down, so this is just going to be too difficult for Verhuver over here. But cavalry on the western side and then war dogs on the eastern side, you know, again, a three-front kind of fight here for Verhuver could be devastating for Eery. But so far, Eery just kind of playing this two-front game. Does have a third town center down here, very forward on the map, so Eery might have the idea that, you know, he wants to establish his market line over here on the eastern corner as well, although he could establish it on either corner. Here comes Eery moving in. He's got the fortress behind him. He's getting out some Farbioders, aka Rams, onto the field, so those Rams are going to be able to do some damage to Verhuver's military production here. And then Eery also, at the same time, moving in with those Raiders. He's going to get into the back of the map, or back of the base here for Verhuver. Going to do some damage on the western flank. Verhuver trying to position his units here to the south to deal with these Raiders. But these villagers are pushed into the town center for safety. Meanwhile, Eery trying to amass some Farbioders to get some building damage behind his infantry here. Needs to move in with his infantry. Looks like he's starting to mix some Hardjars into the mix here. Mix some Hardjars into the composition, I should say. That might get that stables. It does not. Raiders coming in here to try to cut off those Toxotes. So nice flank there from Eery, but he's going to choose to move back under the safety of his fortress. Here comes another ram. He's going to get that stables. So Eery just slowly chipping away here at Verhuver. And look at this, almost 30 Raiders now for Eery, so that's going to be tough for Verhuver. Verhuver is down to 136 population, 66 villagers to the 71 of Eery, so fairly even on villagers, but Eery is pretty much capped at 180, whereas Verhuver is about 40 population behind. Desperately trying to hold on here, but this fortress knocking at the door is just so devastating. And look at this, more production facilities closer to the base coming down for Eery as well. So again, Eery is just slowly creeping in, slowly kind of tightening his grip around the neck of Verhuver here. And Verhuver slowly but surely will be suffocated unless he's able to find a breakout point. And perhaps his breakout point is here on the east. You know, perhaps Verhuver tries to... He does have some rams out, so that's nice. You know, if Verhuver would scout... Look at this. Verhuver has not been out of his base in quite some time. He does not know that this town center is over here. This town center for Eery is relatively undefended. You know, if Verhuver snuck some rams out here on the east, got through this wall, got to this town center, could be huge. But unfortunately, he's relegated to fighting in the northern and western side of his base here. These raiders are going to try to push through this wall, but Verhuver very smartly going for those H3 walls, and he's pushing back this block of axemen for Eery, so Eery is going to fall back again. Verhuver's going to try to go for this frontal approach, but I do not think he's going to be able to do it. He just doesn't have the numbers. He needs to try to go for, you know, a sneaky push that Eery's not ready for. He might be able to get this fortress with 4 rams, but look at this. Eery microing these raiders back behind these Toxotes. Verhuver trying to keep the hoplites in front of these raiders here, but these raiders do get to the rams and these throwing axemen as well. So look at this. Oh, so close. So close, but just not enough. Does he have anything else? He doesn't have a ram queued up. So that just might be game. Verhuver losing a large portion of his army here. At this point, I wonder if Eery might just be toying with Verhuver. These raiders are going to try to come back to the western side here. they'll find that these walls have been repaired, except for this one small section. And of course, Eery, being the excellent player that he is, does very quickly sniff out that damaged section. Just that awareness, guys. The awareness of our top tier players are really what sets them apart. And look at this. He's also repairing his fort as well. Again, Verhuver, he needs to scout this portion of the map over here and see how he can get a nice flank from the east, but it's just so far not enough. Eery does push through the western part of the wall and is now wreaking havoc on the economy of Verhuver. This might just be it. Dropping a ton of villagers in the southern corner here. And Verhuver does defend against the portion of raiders kind of in the middle section of the base, but again, I don't know if he's recognized. Look, Verhuver's cursor is up here once again. These rams are going to fall before they get the fort, and I don't think Verhuver has seen yet that these raiders are just tearing apart his villagers. Look at this. He's down to 56 villagers to 81. I think these raiders have gotten at probably about 15 to 20 villagers so far. This is just... And Verhuver still hasn't seen it. He's desperately trying to break out, but it's just not going to be enough. And look at this. Berserkers on the field for Eery. Those Berserkers are terrifying indeed. And they're going to prove too much for Verhuver. GG. Game number 1 goes to Eery. Good game. Both Verhuver and Eery. Again, the tale of this tape is the map control. Look at this. Just like Carnage in his game against Greeky, you know, when your opponent is relegated to this corner, especially in equal footing, you run out of resources. You know, Verhuver still had this gold mine, but it was going to be depleted very soon. No market line possibility for Verhuver, while Eery did have market lines running from the east. And Verhuver was just kind of... He never really caught up in terms of population. I don't think he was ever maxed out at 180. And, you know, just wasn't able to establish map control. Scouting also was huge for Verhuver. I guess I can't see now that the game's over, but we looked briefly a few minutes ago, and Verhuver didn't know this town center was here. He may have known that this wall was here, but you know, he didn't know anything about the map, and so he just wasn't able to establish any control there. So I believe winner is forced to change civs. Loser does get to choose the map, but does have to note the civilization first, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see what these players choose here. We'll get a quick look here. Look at that. That raid at the end just plummeted Verhuver's villager population by, more than 20 by the end. And, yeah, Eery just had control really since the mid-game. So, the map control, the population count also for Verhuver, again, was just a big tale of that tape, so... Like a type, boys and girls. Alright. Let's get our graphics updated here. So, waiting on Verhuver to get us the next map here. Update this. Eery taking game number 1. game. Good game. Thanks for joining, guys. We're up over 20 viewers, so appreciate that. Thanks for tuning in. We're about to head, into game number 2 of Eery versus Verhuver. For those of you who might just be joining us, this is kind of the initial round of matches for this Cup of Beer tournament, Cup of Beer number 4. So basically, the way it works is we're going to have this first round, and then we're going to have a round of 8 that will happen on December 14th. There is going to be a loser's bracket. So those who lose will head to the loser's bracket, and then eventually we'll have, some semifinals and grand finals from both the loser's bracket and then, of course, the winner's bracket. And so that's going to be on December 14th. So right now, these first few matches are this first round. We've got Eery versus Verhuver right now. Carnage just beat Greeky, so Carnage will be moving on to play Zerton in the first round of the round of 8. I'll be playing Crimson Cantab, and then we've also got Striker versus Casper, I believe. So it's going to be a fun tournament, y'all. I'm pretty excited. I was hoping, to be honest with you, I was hoping we'd have our Romans release tournament at this point, but alas, our Romans, for very, very understandable reasons, have been delayed a little bit into 2020. But for any of you who are not familiar with Age of Empires Online, Project Celeste, this is a fan-run project of the old Age of Empires Online game. You may never, if you're completely new, you may have never even seen Age of Empires Online. Unfortunately, it was not done very well by Microsoft in terms of the monetization and the advertising and all that good stuff, so it ended up failing, but our fan development team for Project Celeste has resurrected the game. The fan development team for Project Celeste, Age of Empires Online, Project Celeste, has resurrected the game, and they are just adding so much content, including the Romans, which are coming very soon, sometime in 2020. And so we're going to have a release tournament for the Romans. We're at, I believe, $275 out of $1,000 prize pool. We're trying to get to $1,000 for a prize pool for a Roman release tournament. That would be absolutely huge for the game. It's going to be a great advertising tool to get more players into the game, and plus we'll have the Romans. So I'm just super pumped for that. So if you haven't already, give the game a download. Age of Empires Online, Project Celeste. Just Google it, and you'll find it. Join the Discord as well. There are instructions with guides. There are guides to installation on the Discord. So definitely give that a look-see if you haven't already. I'm just going to be waiting for these players here. All right, so Verhuver has chosen the Persians, and so the loser's not forced to change civilizations, but Verhuver did choose to change civilizations, and he went with the Persians, and Eery has gone with the Babylonians. So let's check what map he chose. All right, Verhuver chose Arabia. All right, so Verhuver has chosen Persians, and Eery has chosen the Babylonians, and we are going to be on Arabia. So we'll see as we get into this game here that Arabia is kind of a big open map. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it might be the biggest map in the map pool. Actually, some of the newer maps might be bigger. I'm not sure. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. All right, both of our plays are ready here, so we're going to get into this. Chimemurio. Hey, I started playing recently. Weren't Alliance Wars a thing where you had to join one and got perks, I assume, to get access to all 3. Yes, that's correct. So in Project Celeste, unfortunately, like the actual Alliance Wars portion of, or like the actual competition of the Alliance Wars is not functioning in Project Celeste. I think that was like server side during the Microsoft days, so I don't know if we have the capacity to be able to like host the Alliance Wars information. I don't know all of the technical stuff behind it, to be honest with you, as to why we're not able to do Alliance Wars in Project Celeste, but you are able to access the alliances once you're age 4 or level 40. You're able to access the alliances and play the quests and turn things in for the Empire points. Because the Project Celeste is obviously completely free to play, no microtransactions, no nothing like that, no pay to win. So, yeah, Alliance Wars, you can't access all the alliances and all the quests. So that is correct, which is a nice, if we're not able to have Alliance Wars proper, at least we get to have that, right? But thanks for dropping by the stream, Chimmy Morio. Cool name, by the way. So, Arabia, again, one of the biggest maps in the map pool, if not the biggest. And it's a pretty unique map in that if you'll look, our players kind of have these plateaus that they start on either side of the map. And the plateaus have various choke points throughout, various entry points. And in fact, actually, Verhuver ending up with actually a pretty advantageous, if not very advantageous, spawn here for his plateau. Eery's got your standard opening in the northwestern side. He's got another opening here, the main kind of the standard opening in the middle, and then he's also got an opening kind of here in the south. Although he does have a hunt here, so that might be advantageous for him. Whereas actually Verhuver has no hunt over here. He does have one right there, though. But, depending on how Verhuver plays this, he doesn't have this opening here on his base like Eery does. In fact, he's only got 2 openings total, whereas Eery has 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to say let's not restart this match, because I think ultimately the trade-off is that Eery does have this nice hunt, excuse me, and actually a nice gold mine there as well. And also Eery's the stronger player, so I think we're going to be okay. We'll see how these players choose to play this matchup. It looks like Eery is going for kind of a fast H2, fast second town center. It does not look like he's going for that fast Rax. The Babylonians do have to age up to H2 with this Ziggurat, and then from there they'll click their H3 and H4 from the Ziggurat. So Eery's already headed to H2. Meanwhile, Verhuver not quite headed to H2 yet, but he should be after this villager. Yep, there he goes. And it looks like Verhuver is also opting to go for that kind of fast H2, fast second town center. Although Verhuver, unlike Eery, did choose to start on his berries as opposed to trying to find that hunt, that first hunt. Which may be smart, for the Persian player, given the fact that the Babylonians do have the advantage of the mobile storehouse, the ox cart. So, Verhuver choosing to stay on the berries there, and he also, with his scout, has chosen to scout the rest of his plateau as opposed to kind of the front of his base. So let's take a look at his vision here. Yeah, he sees this hunt. That was the first hunt he scouted there, but he doesn't see anything else on the map here. Hasn't even scouted Eery's base yet, so he doesn't know that Eery's going for a fast H2, although I'm sure he probably assumes that by now, given the fact that Eery has not run into his base with any spearmen yet. And Eery now H2 and also throwing down this town center. And yeah, Eery does see this very nice little choke point here with this hunt and this gold mine. So Eery's going to say, you know what, I love this town center placement right here. It's defensive because it defends this choke point, but it also defends about 3 different resources here. So Eery choosing to go for that town center there. Nice placement. Verhuver, on the other hand, choosing to go for a very defensive town center. Yeah, I would like to maybe see from Verhuver here something else. Maybe even moving out on the other side of his plateau here to defend the other part of his plateau, especially because this opening here for him is pretty big. in terms of a choke point. You know, usually on Arabia you like to see your market lines set up right here, and so you'd really want to defend this choke point here. But nevertheless, that would also lose quite a bit of walking time for Verhuver to move across the map to try to get his town center down. And that's another, you know, some players don't think about that, but another advantage of a defensive town center is the reduced walking time for your villagers to get to it and build it. So, you know, it's a game of trade-offs. Verhuver choosing to go for maybe not as resource heavy of a town center and not as much map control from this town center, but again does save some walking time and defends his home base. So we'll see how it pays off for him. We'll see how this town center pays off for Eery. Eery throwing down some gardens. You know, this is a unique aspect of the Babylonian economy, is that they can throw down these gardens, which reduces training time and research time, and eventually heading into age 3 and 4 will also produce a trickle of food for the Babylonian player. So Eery recognizing how critical it is to the Babylonian economy to get these or Babylonian, I shouldn't say economy yet, but just the Babylonian strategy to get these gardens down. He is throwing down his stables. So again, Arabia being such a big map, we're probably going to see, yeah, both of our players choosing to go stables only so far. Pretty standard on Arabia, unless you're an idiot like me and tries to go for a longsword slinger druid composition of Celts on Arabia. Although I guess Celts are a little different. They don't get their stables until age 3, but nevertheless, our players are going for, again, a standard opening of stables. 2 stables coming down for Verhuver, and second stable's coming down for Eery. So Eery's going to get some Lancers on the field, whereas Verhuver's going to get these Asabara on the field. Asabara are pretty well-rounded. Lancers are great in their own right. 10 speed, 1.75 versus infantry, 17 DPS, and 440 health versus 480 health and 20 DPS from the Asabara. So Asabara on their own, just straight health and DPS, a little bit better. They do have a bonus against ranged as well, 10 speed. So head-to-head, these Asabara probably are going to come out ahead. Pierce armor is 30, and Pierce armor is 30, but the melee infantry armor for the Lancers here is nice. But again, we're not going to see any infantry, at least for a while, for Verhuver. So head-to-head, I think the Persians will have the advantage, but once Eery goes age 3, he will have access to Lancer Champion, which provides a charge attack for those Lancers, which is quite good. He's trying to amass his Lancers here. Verhuver moving across the map with a few Asabara. Those Asabara are going to meet a company of 8 Lancers, which they will not be able to beat. So we'll see if these players catch each other. They do not. So Verhuver will get his Asabara into the base of Eery first. Eery doing a nice job of building a natural wall with his houses. He is trying to move with his Lancers. So this is going to be huge for Eery because Verhuver does not really have much to defend against this. He is behind in population, 38 villagers to 45. So moderate advantage for Eery in terms of villager count, and very large advantage in population, 20, and Verhuver is capped as well. And look at this, 4 Asabara versus the 8-9 Lancers of Eery, and Verhuver needs to micro these at least and try to focus fire these Lancers, but he's kind of got his Asabara all over the battlefield there, attacking different Lancers, and now 1 villager down, possibly 2 for Verhuver, and Verhuver is now suddenly stuck in his base again, and now suddenly this lack of opening here in the southern part of his base may be disadvantageous, because now he's kind of stuck here. He does have this nice natural tree line, very, very nice natural wall there for Verhuver, so only this one small opening into his base. Dang, does Eery have that? Yeah, Eery's base is much more wide open than Verhuver's, but nevertheless, he needs to amass some units. He's very far behind in population. 96 population to 57 for Verhuver, so almost 40 population difference. And, you know, villagers is about 8 ahead for Eery. So the population advantage is largely in military here. And Verhuver's going to move Asabara here, but he's going to see that, yeah, that's not going to be an advantageous fight there for him. I don't know what happened to his Asabara that he moved onto the base of Eery. They must have fallen. Here comes Eery pushing into the base of Verhuver. Again, Verhuver just, he's got no units queued up. He's low on resources. Yeah, he's going to lose his stables here. I don't know what Verhuver's play is here. Look at this. Because he was pushed off this berry bush, because he has no map control, he is now suddenly relegated to building farms in age 2 this early, and that's just going to be very tough for his economy. You know, farms are infinite, but they are the slowest food gathering source. So let's see if he got, yeah, he did get that first farm upgrade. So Verhuver trying to make the best of what he can, but he's going to be significantly behind now that he's not able to access these other berry bushes. He does have one lone hunter over here, but it's going to be not enough. Verhuver maybe needed to try to establish some more map presence early on, but you know, maybe he needs to try to, well, he doesn't have the resources to get to age 3, but in age 3 he would have access to these mounted archers, which do have a bonus against cavalry, so that could help him in this fight. But nevertheless, you know, as soon as Eery follows suit, he would be able to get mounted archers of his own, and so once again we would be kind of a dead even composition. But we'll see. We'll see if Verhuver can dig himself out of this hole. Again, he's desperately trying to throw down all these farms, you know, to try to keep up his food production, but it's going to be tough. 2 more stables coming down for Verhuver, so he's trying to also get enough production to be able to keep up with the population of Eery. But again, Eery is just maintaining, not even maintaining, growing the population advantage. You know, he had a 40 population advantage. Now it's up to almost 50, or was at 50. So this is just huge for Eery. Eery's going to age 3 as well. So Verhuver, unfortunately, because he very quickly lost this map control, and again, what a fool I was, this map seeding actually ended up being disadvantageous for Verhuver, because Verhuver couldn't easily access this hunt here, although he didn't access his initial hunt either in the beginning of the game. So who knows what could have been. He's up to 18 Asabara, but look at this, 32 Lancers, 33 Lancers for Eery coming in, and again, Verhuver has this nice choke point to fight in here. Kind of a, you know, the Persians were on the receiving end of the Battle of Thermopylae, but perhaps trying to learn from the Spartans and fight their own Battle of Thermopylae here in this pass, but they just don't have the numbers. Verhuver does need to use this advantage of this defender's advantage. He needs to fall back. He cannot take this engagement here. Yeah, this is just going to not end well for Verhuver. These Asabara are strong, but I think Eery has the numbers advantage and has the surround here. Look at this. Eery just has a complete surround of Verhuver's military. I guess Verhuver does recognize that, you know, he desperately needs to try to break out, because now all of a sudden, now that he's got his farms down, he's doing okay in terms of food, but look at this. He has no gold. He's absolutely no gold. Look at this. 0 gold gathers, 67 gold. What he has on the field and in queue is the last charge for Verhuver, and it's not going to be enough. So, whereas he was able to transition nicely to those farms, he was not able to transition to gold. So that's what ultimately ended up dooming his his battle here was lack of gold. Eery, look at this. He controls his own plateau, very quickly closing up all of these choke points here, and just had control of the map via his units. You know, he pushed Verhuver into his base once again, and Verhuver was just starved for resources. So, good game from both players. Eery, decisive control from the very beginning, or I'm sorry, from the mid game. And Verhuver just was never able to catch up in population. You know, he was behind in population pretty much the entire game. He was somewhat even in terms of villagers for most of the game. Eery started pulling ahead pretty moderately to significantly, you know, towards the mid to late game. So let's look at text, shall we? Pretty even on text. Actually, Verhuver slightly ahead in text. Yeah, well played. Nice little match there. So that is going to conclude the Eery versus Verhuver, and I believe Carnage, aka Trollocules, has it's a GIF. Here I was thinking Carnage linked something appropriate, something like, you know, I don't know, the brackets maybe. No, I'm just kidding. Take a look here. So, Eery taking game number 2 and wins the series 2-0 against Verhuver. So now Verhuver will move on to play the, let's see here, loser of, he's going to move to the loser's bracket, and he will play the loser of match number 7, which will be Vindicator versus the winner of my series with Crimson. So, which will be Crimson. I'll go ahead and tell you that. Crimson versus Vindicator, and then whoever loses that will go on to play Verhuver in the loser's bracket. Meanwhile, Carnage has bested Greeky today, 2-0 in their series. Carnage moves on to play Zerton, whereas Greeky falls to the loser's bracket and will play the loser of match number 8, which will be Caban versus the winner of Casper versus Striker. And Eery moves on to play Rizor. Eery, I'm not going to lie, kind of had an easy path because Rizor is a new PvP player, so he's learning, but he will be outmatched by Eery. Who knows? Anything can happen, but he is a new PvP player, so Eery has a nice path there to the winner, really, of Zerton versus Carnage, which Zerton Carnage is obviously going to be an excellent matchup. Vindicator versus Crimson will be a great matchup, assuming I lose to Crimson. I have improved, but I don't know if I've improved that much. Nevertheless, guys, I'm going to run, so thanks for tuning in. Unless there's any other tournament players in the chat here who wants to play a quick best of 3, I think that's going to be it for us for right now. Thanks for tuning in. Once again, if you haven't already, check out Project Celeste. Give it a Google, give it a download. I think the link is also in the description of this channel. So yeah, the Discord, the forums, the whole shebang is all down in the description. So check that out if you haven't already. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check out the other streams of this tournament. It's going to be a fun little tournament to end the year. Thanks to Lacaum for, please correct me if I'm not pronouncing that name correctly. Thanks to him for organizing this tournament to end the year for Project Celeste. So I can't wait to see you guys in later rounds. Thanks for checking it out. Y'all have a great day. Peace.